Welcome to Big Blend Radio, where we celebrate variety and how it adds spice to quality of life. Hey, everybody. Welcome. It is the fourth Sunday, so you know Mr. Joey Stuckey is back here on Big Blend Radio. It is Arts and Humanities Month, and it's an important month because it really is about honoring musicians, artists, painters, writers, everyone in the world of the arts and what they do in the world of storytelling and connecting people with the arts. And as we say on a lot of our shows, the arts are the one thing that really do tell the truth of what's happening in humanity. And so today we're going to talk a little bit about that and talk about your first gig or how to have a good gig. You know, you could be practicing in the garage or in the bathroom, wherever for years. And now it's time to get out there, and it can be really scary. But I'm going to say that part of the fear goes away when you are prepared. So Mr. Joey, I mean, he's got, you know, the Shadow Sound studio there, and he knows all about sound and also how to keep things in order so that you do have a good gig. So welcome back, Joey. How are you?
Well, my friend, it's good to be in your company as always.
Happy Arts and Humanities Month. Don't you think it's true? I mean, the arts tell the story of humanity, you know?
Absolutely. You can tell what kind of condition any culture is in by looking at its arts. And if its arts are thriving, you know that there are lots of wonderful ideas. People are connected. And that's one of the things that I love about being a musician. I mean, part of our job, in my mind, is to introduce new thoughts into the zeitgeist, but also to be historians of what's come before and what's current, what's happening, and all that kind of stuff.
Celebrating the day your life was saved that caused blindness, but it's really, it's like you have two birthdays. But this year, how did that go? You had an acoustic show. Is it at the Mill? Am I getting the name of the place correct?
River Hill. That was close enough.
River Hill.
It had a hill in it. No. It was at the Macon Arts Alliance.
See, that's what it was.
You did a good job. No, but it was the Mill Hill Arts Center, and we had it over at that venue. And that was the first time we'd been to that. I had been to that venue once before when I received the Macon Arts Alliance Cultural Award. I guess it was last year. And I thought it was a good space. It holds about a little over 200 people. We did every Alive Day is different. I never plan it to be that way, but it always is. And so our first Alive Day was an outdoor back in 2017. Was we closed off the street, did a street party type thing, and we've had that go from like 2 to 10. And we've had different hours. This was a 6 to 9 thing, so it was a little bit shorter, but it was very, very cool. So my buddy Tom Rule, that always has been part of the Live Day since the beginning. He's been the keyboard player in my band forever, and we even did a chart-topping jazz record together. And so he opened it up with a lot of really wonderful stuff. He's not a singer, but he played a lot of really great instrumental piano, and I always thought I just think that's a nice way to open things up and sort of do that. Then I did an acoustic set, so acoustic guitar and vocal, and then I had a percussionist join me for that. And then we had someone that I have been a huge fan of for a long time, has been a Georgia legend for a long time, Caroline Aiken, who's now in her 70th year, but she's been performing since the late 70s and been performing all over Georgia, was a big part of the careers of the Indigo Girls and Sean Mullins and some other great Georgia legends. But she came to perform, and along with her were two other fantastic Georgia treasures as well, which was my good friend Diane Durrett, which is how I got to know Caroline, was through Diane, because Diane is the president of the Atlanta chapter of the Grammy Board, where I serve. And then we also had Liz Melendez as well. And so it was funny because we were going to do this whole acoustic vibe thing, and that was kind of it. And at the last minute, Caroline had changed it up a little bit, where she's decided that she was going to bring her piano. So she actually played. Wow. Yeah, she actually played piano and guitar, not at the same time, but she played piano and guitar, and it was absolutely fabulous. Liz went ahead and sort of switched it up on us and played her electric guitar. So it was really quite an exciting set. She played the way they did it was they did sort of songs, and each one would be featured on a song, and the others would back them up. And so they did that about 4 or 5 times where, so you had about a 15 song set, which was a little slightly longer than an hour, but it was well worth it. And it was absolutely fabulous. I mean, Liz, I've heard her play before, but she has a real Jimi Hendrix kind of thing going on the guitar.
Wow.
And of course, my friend Diane Durette's a really fabulous singer, great guitar player, wonderful songwriter, just really, really magnificent songwriter. And then, of course, Caroline Aiken was absolutely fabulous as well. And played piano and played acoustic guitar. Even did a short spoken word poem that she'd written about Mama Louise, who is a famous figure here in Macon, Georgia. She owned a restaurant called H&H, and that's where all the black musicians and all the white musicians began to sort of get together and become friends and allies and co-writers and all these different things because Mama Louise was so integrated and she fed all the musicians for free or next to free because she was just a sweet, giving woman, and it's how a lot of musicians survived by her charity, for lack of a better word. So
Wow.
she did a really wonderful. I've never heard the poem, but it was really fantastic. So it was really, really great. And like I said, these things always end up, you know, changing every year. But what stays the same is that we tell the story of triumph over adversity, and we also connect as neighbors and friends and fellow beings. And there usually evolves a theme, and not something I really designed by choice. Just these things sort of happen, and it's really interesting because last time we had a live day. Before this one, I had several other disabled musicians on the bill, and I only ask people that I know uh, because to play because I want to make sure that they have the right spirit for the day.
Hmm.
I've always had the right spirit for the day, and it just really worked out really well. I was really pleased with it, and we had a lot of fun. Just I look forward to these things because it's a really neat chance to get out into the community and meet people and hear other stories of triumph and survival. And I'm a hugger, as you know, and I had so many strangers come up and hug me and say, "Oh, we're so glad you're alive. We're so glad to come out and celebrate with you." And that's a really neat thing to connect with other people, and have people celebrate their triumphs and your triumphs, and it's a lot of fun. Anyway, I could go on forever, but it turned out really well.
Well, that's again like that's the power of storytelling, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
It's like, and you telling your story, inspires others to get through their hurdles because we all have
Absolutely.
something we have to overcome,
Yeah.
and if you don't, oh my gosh, how boring would life be if you don't have
Well,
something? Every trip you have to have something that gives you a tour. And
yeah.
the negatives open doors to other possibilities. I've learned in
Yeah.
life that it does. It's just how
Yeah, I think you may remember from the last podcast when
yeah,
Diane was
yeah.
was a guest. She told her story about her mother's survival, uh, and how Tim Moore is with her because of medicine. She sang a song called "It Is Well," and boy, what a beautiful song! Because that's what her grandmother would say, and so it was a beautiful song, and it stuck in my mind. That song, it was a really special moment where she got to talk about her family and her family history, and the "It Is Well" song was it was a beautiful tune, and it's great. I have to say that I've had the honor of writing a song with Diane and Ed Rollins of Collective Soul. We all three wrote a song together. Whether it'll ever be released is another story, but we all wrote a song together. So I already knew that she was a fabulously talented songwriter as well as singer and guitar player. And so it was just, and the other thing is, we have so many friends um, that I hadn't seen for a while that came out to the show. So it was so nice to see some friends that sometimes you just get busy, you get your head down, you're doing your work, and you sometimes miss the opportunity to connect with your friends like you should. And we had so many friends out. It was just a fun thing.
Yeah, that's awesome. Well, hopefully Nancy and I will get to one of your alive days at some point here. We've got to, change our
It- it-
travel schedule. You never know. Actually, it's a good possibility next year.
well, you should definitely do it and we'll put you to work.
I know. Well, I'm all good with that. I'm all good with that. I'll work. I'm good at that. Yeah, I love that This is, I think we've always, no matter what the topic is, we always talk about that power of music and how it heals, unites, just makes you feel good. Music is everything, man. It truly is.
Yeah.
Now let's talk about gigs.
Yeah.
Okay. Because, oh my gosh, there's so much to consider, but I don't want to overwhelm people. But I do know that if you go in prepared, you have a leg up, you know?
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, I have to be well prepared because I can't just hop in the car and go get something that I forget and I can't just throw something in the bag. I have to know where it is so that I can have access to it. So as a blind person, I mean, you know, being organized is really key to me being able to function in a profound way. So, but yeah, the thing that people don't think about and I will tell you that my bandmates make fun of me sometimes because I'm overly prepared. But boy, there are times where you have to be overly prepared. So I always take, no matter where I'm going, I always take 2 guitars in
Mm,
case something happens to one of them, and, so I always have a backup guitar, and, that's really handy because if you're in the middle of a show and you break a string, even if you have an extra set of strings, which you totally should, by the way, and you should
yeah.
totally have a string winder, but you should and they make these wonderful tools, that's a string winder and a clipper so you can clip the end of the string off. So you should totally have that tool, but you don't want to stop in the middle of your set and kill 5 minutes changing the string. You want to change the string when the break comes around or when you're off stage or something like that. So I always carry 2 guitars and I always carry 2 amps when we're on tour. Now, if we're in Macon, sometimes I won't carry the second amp if I'm close enough to the studio that I can run back and grab one. But I
Mm.
remember one time they were always like, "Man, we don't need 2 amps. Why are you carrying 2 amps?" Blah. And boy, I plugged into the power at a gig one time, and my amp exploded, like not into pieces, but started smoking and
Yep.
stopped working. And that amp never was the same.
I've seen that. Nancy, at one point when we had our band, we were rehearsing, though it wasn't in public, and they had an amp behind her, and she's playing keys, and all of a sudden we saw smoke, what looked like coming out of her butt. Like, I'm not kidding. She had the smoke, and it was the amp behind her, and that's scary, you know.
Oh yeah,
And again, it's rehearsing, but you have minimal time,
that's
just
right.
the same because you're paying. Okay.
Oh
And
yeah,
time
yeah,
is money. Even if it's
yeah,
your free time is still valuable. Time is the most valuable thing we have. Time and love, right? And music
absolutely.
and chocolate,
Oh yeah,
wine
don't forget.
and wine.
Yeah,
But no, but that same thing, it's like, even I actually look at when you go to rehearsal, you should almost have it as strict as when you go to a gig or a
yeah.
performance.
And I mean, the thing about rehearsal, I mean, is we set up like it's a show for my band. We set up like it's a show with a full PA and everything. We rehearse the same way we're going to be on stage. And now, ideally, what happens is you set up a tour where you don't have to bring your PA and your lights, and they have all that stuff, and you just show up with the back line because otherwise it's a real heavy load that you have to. I mean, we have a trailer and all that kind of stuff, but I prefer not to have to bring the PA if I can help it. And it's a lot easier. But we set up with the PA and everything, monitors and everything the way we're going to do a show, um, and that rarely changes. To I will say that the one thing you don't want to do is get so reliant on your specific setup that you're thrown a curveball if you have to use somebody else's. You want to be professional and flexible enough that nothing throws you a curveball. Whatever happens, you just make it work. And a lot of that comes down to experience. Um, and just time, practicing your craft. But I mean, I did a televised show that reached approximately 3 million people. I was on the same stage as Trisha Yearwood and the B-52s, and there was about 3,000 people in the audience, and then about I think it was like 3 million on TV. And this was the Georgia Music Hall of Fame Awards back in the early aughts, and our monitors went down. And because you did the sound check early that morning at like 8 a.m. The gig wasn't till 8 o'clock that night, so you had a long day of loading in, loading out, and going to the green room and all this stuff. And you had, of course, we were important to the broadcast, but we weren't the big stars, right? So the big stars got preferential treatment and more time to do their sound check and all this stuff. But we had a perfect sound check. Everything sounded great. It was awesome. But you have 4 minutes. You have two sections of the stage, and you have 4 minutes basically to load in your stuff. Then you play your 5 minute song, because this is just a song. We just each band just did one song. You play your 5 minute song, and then you have to load out. So you have a total of about 12 minutes or 15 minutes that you have to get everything on and everything off. Anyway, when we went to play, there were no monitors, and we had absolutely no. And I heard them say my name from the house. I could barely hear them say Joey Stuckey, and I gave the band a count off, and we played with no monitors. And when you look back at the video, you can't tell. You can't tell there were no monitors because that's how well rehearsed we were. Even having not being able to hear, I could hear the drums because they were loud enough, and I couldn't even really hear my guitar. So we played. We had drums, auxiliary percussion, which we couldn't hear, keyboards we couldn't hear, bass we couldn't hear, guitar we couldn't hear, vocal we couldn't hear, and the only thing we could hear was the main drum set, which helped. But
Mm-hmm.
but
Tone.
yeah,
Well, well, that's why I like to be barefoot. I know that sounds weird, but
no,
there's a
I mean Evelyn
vibration,
Glenn
and
does it.
I can feel I go by well, music is vibration, right? But it's just this extra vibration, and I don't know, and the vibrations have. This is going to sound so weird, but it has a tone. The vibration in I know, no, I don't know how to explain that, Joey, but like it's like another set of ears.
No, I know what you mean. I mean, there's a very famous deaf percussionist, Evelyn Glennie, who's an Australian, I believe, who plays barefoot so she can feel the vibrations and helps her play. And she's a percussionist. So yeah, I'm familiar with that. There's a lot of people that do that. Amy Grant used to. I'm not sure why if Amy Grant did it for the vibration, but she used to go barefoot on stage. In Celtic Woman, there's a fiddle player that goes barefoot on stage. Presumably,
Janice.
yeah. Oh, really?
Yeah, Janis Joplin. But now, I think I'm too old to do that. Nobody
See,
wants to see my feet.
you
Nobody
meant
wants
Janet
to.
from the Muppets.
No, I meant Janis Joplin, not Muppet. Well, Janis Joplin, the Muppets would be good. But this is such a good thing about like your rehearsal. And that's the thing too. You can get up on stage and jam with people once you've been around the block,
Yeah,
or
absolutely.
go to hoot nights and things like that. Go to jams. Just go like open mic nights to me. That could be one of your first shows because that is one of the best ways to go somewhere, mess up, and it's like a warmer atmosphere. Everyone knows it's just like, hey, we're just going to try things out. You meet other musicians and like to me, that was, I think we did a lot of that when we had our band. I would go up in the mountains, later lived there and ran the hoot night things. We call them hoot nights because we were in the mountains. And it was what really taught me to absolutely listen because it was all jamming, right? It was, you'd get up there, you'd try your material and, you'd do covers, but that's where it was a really good place to just try out originals. Even though it was kind of a bar setting, it was people who came for the music. It was like in this little small bar in a lodge, and it just worked perfectly. The acoustics were great because it was all wood, old wood, and everybody loves wood. And everyone loves music. And it was like the bar was kind of at the back, but the music lovers came and sat outside in front. And it had enough to have this balance, teach you to get someone in the back bar to turn around and listen. Like, how are you going to do that? How to gauge the room and get them to pay attention, but it wasn't so crazy loud that you'll never achieve that because then people would go outside and smoke and smoke whatever they wanted to smoke out there up in those days. And it was just such a good training thing because people would jam. We do like songs that everyone knows, like Knocking on Heaven's Door, and you would learn to harmonize right there and then. You had to learn to listen. You had to learn to appreciate each other's gear. Like I'm weird about that, where I don't want anyone to ever touch my gear. Like,
Oh,
don't.
yeah, I feel the same way.
So there's,
Unless
yeah,
you're someone I know that I can
yeah.
trust not to damage it. Because here's the thing, um, I had a really situation where people ask me to borrow my equipment like all the time, and I have to
Mm.
have one rule for everybody, and so I'm not going to let you use it until somebody else knows. So the answer is no, and the reason is because if you break it or damage it, are you going to have the money to replace it?
Or
And
can you even? Is it available?
right, right. And so that's so if the answer to those questions are no, then that's you just can't do it. I mean, this stuff takes a long time to acquire and
Therefore,
yeah, I had an intern that wanted to borrow one of my amps that's a $800 amp, and I said, can you replace it if something happens to it? No, I said, well then that's your answer. You can't, I as much as I want to support you, you
right.
know,
Well,
I
that,
just
but that,
can't loan my stuff out.
but that's the thing. Okay. Like talking about your first gig, once you're getting set up, I've seen some stupid stuff. You know, here's your band getting set up. They think, oh, you can have a cocktail right and I've been guilty of that too. Trust me. I've been guilty of a lot of things in this band stuff. And do not put drinks on your amps. Oh my God. I see it all the time. It drives me bonkers on
Yeah, it's a
pianos.
terrible idea.
See, and I've seen things go down in the middle of a gig. It's like,
Yeah.
I always think, like you were talking about tuning a guitar, right? And especially different temperatures. Now, you learn that in the mountains and in
Oh
the
yeah.
desert. We were like always, so you'd go down, we would drive down from the mountains to San Diego. Now your guitar is like, whoa, wait, I've got some ocean breezes and some moisture suddenly. My strings are going to, they're feeling a little loosey goosey. You get up into the mountains and it's high desert. The strings are getting a little like, I don't know about this, so we had to be really on it and understand your strings. And what I learned was don't put new strings on the day of a gig. Don't do it. It sucks. And you're
Some
tuning
people,
on stage more.
some people do that. I'll tell you,
Huh.
I don't. I think that's a bad idea because they stretch for the first day or two. They're gonna stretch on you, and you're gonna be tuning a lot more. I did a recording session. It was my first big session. I was only an assistant, wasn't the main person or anything, but it was for the Outlaws album Diablo Canyon, and this is the Outlaws. Had a bunch of sort of southern rock hits and stuff, and
Hmm?
they were very kind to me. They were very sweet. And Huey Thomason from the Outlaws, who also later played with Leonard Skinner, played on my first album. I got him to play on one of my songs, which he didn't have to do. It was kind of him to take some whippersnapper, this 20-year-old kid or whatever, and play on his record. I mean, I paid him, but I'm saying, but to even do it at all was a privilege with his talent. Anyway, but they changed strings every song, and it was just crazy. And I never understood that. I'm telling you from a scientific perspective here, there's absolutely no way you can play one song and hear the difference in a new set of between one take and the next. I mean, it was crazy. And they had to spend studio time sitting there actually stretching their strings. They'd take their hand and run it underneath the guitar, under the strings and stretch
Yeah.
them for a few minutes and then retune and retune.
No.
And I was just like, this is nuts.
Well, yeah.
So,
Oh, and also, okay, tuning a guitar, there's an art to it. And so you want your guitar to be tuned before the show if you are still novice, right?
Oh.
Because I don't think you should wait until you're perfect to get out there. I'm not one of those. I think you should do as much as you can, but at some point you got to get off and get out there because that's one
Yeah.
of the quickest ways to learn. The best rehearsals is a gig, period.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
that's why I say the open mic things are like the best thing, I think. Joey, I don't know what you think on that, but I think if that's a really good way to get to learn before you go do your first solo gig or band gig is to go do it yourself because sometimes your band can lead you astray. I'm just going to say that it can happen, but trying to tune a guitar in public is a whole other thing than sitting on your own tuning your guitar.
Yeah, it's
there.
we it depends on what's going on. So if we go into a space where you're there at 4 o'clock for sound check and then you don't go on till 8 or something like that, then you're going to have to tune right before the show. But you do that in the green room or the backstage area or whatever you want to do. Ideally, you get about 15-20 minutes to let your guitar acclimatize to the new temperature of wherever you're playing and then tune it again. So that's in a perfect world. My guitars are one of the differences between an inexpensive guitar and a really pro level guitar is the tuning pegs and how well they hold tune. That's one of the reasons I love DW drums so much. They hold their tune so well when you have different hitters and different players, because in the studio, we have a studio drum kit that's set up and ready to go. You can bring your own if you really want to, but that costs you that I charge for that setup time because I got to break mine down and set yours up. That's going to take 45 minutes. So you're saving 45 minutes by using my drums, and they're DW drums, so they sound good, and they're sort of tuned mid level. What I mean by that is they're tuned sort of in between hard rock and jazz, so they're open, but they're not ringy, and so they work pretty well on anything you choose to any genre you choose to play. I mean, but anyway, with the guitars, yeah, we always try to give it a few minutes to acclimatize. But you ideally don't want to be doing that on stage. But I will say that before we start playing, I always have one of the guys in my band check my tuning and tune again, because if you've been there for any length of time, this tuning is gonna slip potentially. But that's why you want to invest in a guitar that's got really good, a really good bridge and a really good tuning system, because they tend not to lose their tuning as much.
And guitars need to be tuned together. Like, I know that sounds weird, but like if
Well,
you've got
you know what I do?
as a duo,
What I do to combat that is I make everybody use the same tuner.
Okay, that's
So
good.
that it's like, okay, there's a tuner on my pedal board, and everybody from the bass player, to if I had another guitar player, which I tend not to, but if I did, everybody uses the same tuner, so we're all hitting the same.
Is fantastic, because I know my friend and I, Gemma, we would sit there and go, "No, yours is better. No, mine isn't." No, because I mean, really, I wish I had met you years ago, Joey. You would have set us all straight pretty
Yes,
quickly.
absolutely.
But I mean, if I'm here as the object of ridicule for what not to do, okay? Because I pretty much have done everything you're not supposed to do, and that's okay.
I have to tell you, one of the things you said was really important, because I am, and I'm less so now. I'm more about speaking with music and everything like that. But when I first started, because I loved music so much and it meant so much to me, I really wanted it to be perfect. And I've come to realize over the years there's no such thing as perfect. But
Yeah.
and that's actually the subject of one of the major talks that I give all over the world now. Is called How to Avoid Sound Blindness, and part of it's a critical listening lecture, but teaching how to get back to critical listening and how to use your ears to maximum effect when it comes to making a record.
Mhm.
But part of that is to learn that there's no such thing as perfection, because if you chase that forever, you're never gonna find it. That's
You're
not to
never
say
gonna get it out there.
that's not to say that you shouldn't do your best. And there's a time to quit.
Yeah.
But anyway, one of the things that I had to learn, I never did open mic nights, but one of the things I had, but that would have been a good idea. But one of the things that I had to learn was I was rehearsing the band relentlessly and perfecting every note. Remember, I'm in my band. I'm the songwriter, the arranger, the conductor, the front man. I'm all those things. And so I wrote everything from the drum parts to the bass lines to the keyboard part. I wrote it all. And so I was making sure it's absolutely perfect. And there came a point where no matter how much we rehearsed, it just wasn't getting any better. And so then we had our first show, and I felt like we were ill prepared, but we had our very first show, and magically, being in that space and exchanging energy with other people between the listener and the performer, and actually performing where you forget everything else and get lost in the performance, that tightened us up like no rehearsal could have. And
It's true.
that is why, if it's an open mic night or whatever it is, the more you can get out and play, and open mic nights are a good idea, because people are not expecting perfection. They're expecting to hear things a little bit more raw, a little bit more experimental. They're not there to tear you down. Usually it's a group of your peers that are at the same level you are. So, that's why you made such a great comment. That's such a good idea to do this open mic night.
They've taught me everything. And as a singer, vocalist wise, I learned a lot by doing karaoke. Now, don't laugh, everyone, but it's true.
No.
Because, and here's why. And honest to God, this is what I don't like about karaoke, is because it's a recording. You're singing to a recording. There's no connection with a band. There's no like, everything's alive and real when you're with a band. And if someone, screws up the timing, you all come back together somehow. And that's the beauty of it and the joy and I don't know, that's the challenge of it. I think
Yeah.
you're not supposed to be perfect. It would suck. And
Yeah.
karaoke, though, taught me how to use a mic. It taught me how
Yeah.
to get up on stage. It taught me how to learn something to a T. It taught me timing. It taught me actually, because I mean, I can read music and everything, but if you ask me what key I sing something in, I still, I, I've gone on stage and really embarrassed myself not knowing that way too many times. And karaoke taught me what you think, what your head voice is. And then suddenly, and you could sing it in your car, right? Sing along in your car to something. Then you get up on stage and then you realize, oh, no, because this is different. It teaches you projective voice. So it's kind of like singing to a metronome versus a band, which still needs to be, on time. The timing needs to be what it's supposed to be. Some songs change time through, and all of that, but it really teaches you also what the layers are of a song. The backup verse, you always thought it was this. No, it's not. And karaoke will also teach you that you really didn't know the words to begin with.
I have to say, I've done karaoke twice. The first time I was playing in a band on the cruise ship, and all my friends wanted to go do karaoke. And at the time, again, I was very young, probably 23, something like that. And at the time, I really objected to it. I was like, I don't want to do karaoke because there's going to be a bunch of drunk people singing, and it's just going to suck, and I don't want to do it. And but they're like, oh yeah, you got to
Wah.
go. Yeah, I know. So then, so anyway, they convinced me to do it. And they're like, get up there and sing something. I was like, okay. So they happen to have Mac the Knife, which I'm famous for doing. That's one of my songs. That's when I play with my jazz group. That's one of the songs that we always do. And we do the Bobby Darin arrangement where it changes keys every verse. So not only did this song not do that, it stayed the same key for the whole song. So you had to learn that very quickly. I was like, oh, that's not changing key. And the other thing was, my friends were trying to be sweet to me because there are words going across the screen with you. And of course, as a blind person, I can't read that. So my friends were trying to be very helpful and they were trying to read in my ear the words. But what was hilarious was the words that the karaoke machine had were wrong. And
Oh,
I know Mac the Knife cold. I mean,
mm,
I've been singing it for a billion years,
yeah.
and I knew it cold, and it was really distracting.
It's like singing Mustang Sally to me. It's like
Well,
it'll never leave your body.
it was really hard to stay on point and on key, and everything else with these friends reading loudly in my ear the lyrics that were wrong, and of course I couldn't tell them to shut up because I was singing, and so that was my one karaoke experience, and then the other one was I always kicked off the Atlanta Country Music Hall of Fame Awards. Gosh, I guess for a decade or longer. The other thing I will say about the karaoke idea, as I say, I've only done it a couple times, as at all. But the other thing is you learn how to think that, you know, you learn to make interest. Had we had a the karaoke system went out and came back on when I was doing Georgia on My Mind, and I just kept singing. And because I was on time when it came, and it can be a lot of fun. I mean, well, like I said, when I was younger, I was a little too serious, and but I was like, I don't want to do this. This is stupid. But it's it really I tell you, I bring to the table as a producer is that I'd sit down with a band and do is make sure they're singing the song in the right key. And a lot of times, if they write it in G or something like that, they think that's the right key. But when you listen to them perform, I'm smart enough to know, hey, you've got range that you could go up. This is a little low for you, or this is a little high for you. Let's do it in this key. And you would be amazed at how many people that are professional players, professional singers who make a living doing it don't bother to experiment with different keys for their songs. You would be absolutely astounded.
Well,
Uh,
I would know, like, like the karaoke thing is where it taught me, and I would go, okay, I need it to go down one or two. I didn't know exactly how to say what key or any of that. And that's kind of how I learned, because also in our band, we had a lot of people who've been around the block, but they were basically, they looked down on me. Like, and I was very young and female, and sorry, but this is really the truth of what happened, and it sucked. And I wasn't feeling confident. And so I needed to find confidence beyond the band because it was our
Sure.
band.
Yeah.
So I had to. And otherwise, like, how am I going to tell this guy who knows how to play this really killer guitar lead that, you're being an idiot, And no, I may not have been around the block as much of you, but you don't get to, it was hard for me to even do my originals with the band at all. And they were different than what the band, and in fact, too complicated for the band. And so they got put aside, and I wasn't strong enough as this young female in this band of all ages of men to stand up. Nancy was in it and she would
Yeah.
kick my butt about it, but I just didn't have that confidence level. So I'd go and do other things to learn away from the band. And that's what
Yeah.
actually propelled me further. And when I met Nancy's laughing in the background here, that's how I ended up playing with really good, I mean, the Flying Burrito Brothers, Canned Heat, and people like that. That's who I ended up performing with at the end. And so
Yeah.
it's like, it's not the end. It's never the end, right? But I had to get out of that. And I want to say that for those who are starting, don't be bullied in the band. If you're being bullied and you don't feel that relaxed, then go do like something maybe like what I did. It was like, don't let him bully you, because that is not good band behavior.
Well, there's a difference between someone educating you when you have less experience and someone looking
Yeah.
down on you. Those are two
They were
different
trying to be the
things.
power. It was like a leadership thing. And
Right.
I don't, and band stuff is drama filled, but
Oh,
not if you go in with some kind of guidelines and rules. And this is how we are. I mean, we went through so many different drummers. Oh my gosh. I could tell you stories that we should write a book on our band, because it was like, I mean, I don't know if they all wanted to be Fleetwood Mac or what, but look at Fleetwood Mac, all their drama, they get on stage and they pull off
sure.
a killer gig.
Yeah.
They put on a show. And that's because it's like and that tenacity comes from their drama. So everyone's a little different. I know Joey never wants to record Stevie Nicks because she takes too much time in the
Yes.
studio. But
Yes.
this is the thing. It's like, and when you have a show, you have to be on time. Oh, that drives me insane.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. You better as a band show up on time, and you need to be
Or
there
early.
early. Do not tell me. Oh,
If you think it's going to take you an hour to get to the gig, plan for 3 hours. I mean,
Oh,
just
okay, I remember doing this gig. It wasn't a first gig, but I was breaking away from the band and had done a lot of solo things, but still not great, like as a guitarist, but enough to do an opening act for some event that was happening. It was the La Paloma Theater, which was the first talking theater in San Diego. Very
huh.
historic theater, beautiful theater.
Hey,
And now remember, Jewel comes from there, right? And this had been maybe 5-10 years after she got really big. And
yeah.
well, they opened a Martini Ranch bar store, and I was like waiting and waiting. Got there early, and I am nervous, so I thought a martini or two may be a good idea. Let me tell you, no, it's not. And here's one of my biggest lessons to everybody: shows, performances, anything can happen. And I can also say this in regards to podcasts and stuff. I mean, we've done so much live stuff that just be prepared that what you think you're going to do is probably not going to happen. So I go up there, I'm supposed to play, I think, 2 songs, right? And I'm all fine for that. And I get through them. And the one guy, and I remember he's passed away now, sadly. It was like an environmental thing we were doing. And he goes, well, you're like the new Jewel here. And I'm like, and at that time, I really wasn't into that kind of stuff. And I kind of felt like, what? Don't you dare. I'm a blues singer. I'm not, anyway, I was just a little, I ended up having to play an hour because they were an hour behind on things. An
Oh
hour.
gosh.
Now,
Yeah.
other people may be prepared for that. I was not. I was rerunning songs. I was playing stuff. My guitar started getting out of tune. I'm like, where's the next martini? No. Be prepared though, because you may need more than what you think you have. I don't know what to do
Well,
in that
that's
situation.
what we do. We do that anyway. So for a live day, I rehearse with my percussionists. We rehearse 15 songs. We ended up playing 10, which is about a 45-minute set, especially by the time I talk a little bit in between. But we had 15 in the can in case that very thing happened. where we needed to play more songs because somebody else was late or somebody else wasn't prepared. We always have extra in the, in the can, so we're ready if we need to do that. And you can play the first song you played that night. You can start over if you have to, but
Yes,
uh,
done
the,
that.
but the other thing was we had these carpets on the stage because we live streamed the show, which was our first live stream for our live day, and we live streamed it, and we tried to dress the setup a little bit. So we put these carpets on the stage to make it, and we did one carpet was the piano player and my group, and the other carpet was Carolyn Aiken and Diane Durrett and Liz Melendez. So that way we had easy zones for cameras, easy zones for setup. So it was really easy to find your spot and, and set up your gear and leave it set up the whole time kind of thing, blah, blah, blah. And keep in mind, a live day was from 6 to 9, doors at 5:30. I was there at that venue at noon, setting up the PA system and setting up the stage and hanging cameras and lights. And, I wasn't doing all that personally, but I was there to supervise it and let everybody in. And then we left at about 11 that night. So it was a long, long day for a very short amount of actual music. But anyway, one of the things we didn't take into account was you always think carpet's going to be, sort of grabby, but it was a little slippery. And so my
Oh,
my my pedal slid away from me. I was trying to use my pedal that I have that does backup vocals. So it reads the guitar voicings on your guitar and puts in however many backup vocals you program it to put in. And you can get real specific about it, what kind of intervals you want and all this stuff. But anyway, so it slid away from me twice because the floor was slippery. So, I should have brought something to hold that in place, but I didn't realize the carpets, as I say, you usually think of carpets being kind of grabby, but I didn't think to check that. So that's just one little thing that, it wasn't a huge disaster. Certainly I made an error. Like I tried to hit the pedal and bring in the backup vocals and I couldn't because it had moved on me.
uh,
And of course I can't see, so I didn't know that till I tried to hit the pedal. Anyway, no matter how prepared you are, something will probably go wrong, and you need to be okay with that.
yeah, and yeah, you do, and then you just put it in your body, like
Yeah, you learn.
like doing live podcasts. Just when you thought you've done it all, something absolutely from the left field will happen. And honestly, here's the deal. I believe that when you do a show, whether it's, music or theater or anything, be honest with the audience. Like if, I've watched like Adele, right? Adele at the Grammys has stopped and said, let me start again. And I think there's some even Paul McCartney has done that, where that maybe you started it off wrong. Rather than go down a wrong road for too long for everyone and try to climb out of a hole, sometimes just go, let me start over.
Yeah,
Or laugh when humor goes a long way. And honest to God, I mean, I've learned to just laugh at myself, I have other wonderful words, but laughing, some humor. I mean, we'd get the giggles all the time and the audience loves that. Audience likes to
absolutely.
laugh.
Uh, yeah,
Humor is your friend.
I
Hmm.
totally agree. That's. I mean, and I mean that is totally totally true because I mean, at the end of the day, I mean, yes, you expect a professional show, but life's not perfect. And
Hmm.
you can let the audience in on the joke, and 9 times out of 10, they'll be on your side. They're not looking for you to have a bad experience. I mean, most times.
Oh,
So
this is a real interesting thing. We were in Greenville, Texas last week and went to a theater that a lady, she lived in Austin for a while, was born and raised in Greenville, went home basically and opened up the Texan. And we're going to be airing this episode soon. We did an interview while there, and you go in, and we're talking about, the small town Greenville outside of Dallas. And some people look at it as a suburb, but it's beautiful. It's on the historic Jefferson Highway. We love that. And we go in. Downtown is it's kind of like Macon style, right? How your downtown is.
yeah,
The older buildings are there and real boutique shops, and they have an incredible amphitheater that the city has put in, like has just remodeled, like $5 million. You know who's played there is Count Basie, Duke Ellington. Victor Borg. Just incredible. And right now, like Crystal Gale is performing there. I mean, it's
Oh,
high
cool.
end. This is an incredible theater, and they're set up for, like, if a comedian wants to go and do a live taping, they're set up for it. I
Neat.
mean, it is state of the art. Well, the Texans across the street, neon lights, the whole bit. You go in, and this lady has transformed this building and the seating. The seating is all going down to the stage, but the tables, there's tables in the front. It is so spaced out. And when you get on the stage, and she was explaining this, and then I went on stage with her, and she says musicians have changed how they do their setup for her. In fact, Billy Bob Thornton was starting he was starting an acoustic tour, and because of her way of, it's so intimate, Joey. I mean, I don't even think she can get 100 people in there. Maybe 75. I don't know. I'll have to listen to the interview again, but it's so intimate. And she's had some greats in there. And I think that's most of the interviews. Like, well, have you had this? Well, I've had that. Well, who do we know? It was really fun because it's just this intimate setting. And he Marshall amped it though, even on an acoustic. And every time he starts his tour there, because of the acoustics, because of the intimate seating, like some of the musicians are just like, oh, there's no hiding. You are right there with the audience, so close, and they love it. And they just, it's Greenville's, I think because she's near Dallas, it's great for musicians on tour to have like another gig in between, but I don't know, it's a very special, and the ceiling is like, it's trippy. Like, you have to experience this, but the vibe of it is, it's special. I mean, that to me would be a place where I'd be okay. Know that people can see you. It's not like you can fix your face on Zoom.
Yeah.
They're there. They're there. And that's a beautiful thing. And musicians have, like, the one person, I can't remember which musician, but I mean, she's really had some greats and continues to do so. And she said he just stopped halfway through a song and went, we can't follow this set list. It doesn't make sense, because the room was so intimate. It was like they were able to talk to the audience and see what they wanted to hear. And they're there to be able to do whatever the audience wants.
Oh,
And
nice.
it was, yeah. And I think that's the other thing, is to read the room. That's something I learned very quickly, is if you feel like you're banging your head against the wall, you got to change something up, and it's okay to change whatever
Yeah,
you need to
we
change.
we always we always have a set list, which I think is a good idea, and we always put the key of the song on the set list, which is a good idea because I've had people not pay
Yeah.
attention and start in the wrong key, and so we always put the key on there. But I count everything off 9 times out of 10. Every once in a while, somebody else will start the song, but 9 times out of 10, I'm the one that counts it off. So it's at whatever tempo I want, and we're used to playing at different tempos depending on the crowd, and if we feel like the last song or two hadn't gone over real well, but we realize that 3 songs back that song went over really well. I'll just start calling the songs, and we'll just ignore the set list. But
Mm.
you got to be rehearsed and ready. You can't, you got to be rehearsed and ready to do that.
And if it's just you performing, you can do
Oh,
it
no big deal.
right now. When okay, I understand it's different if you're touring, right? And you've never been there, and you definitely want to have a sound check before you
Oh,
perform.
sure.
Uh,
Ideally,
yeah,
but
ideally. Sometimes you can't.
sometimes it can't. Yeah, if it's a festival,
Sometimes
we'll do the first song as a
look.
sound check.
Look what
So
happens in, like, the festival, like Woodstock, man. You're going to get dropped off by helicopter, and you're going to drop some acid and go see what happens. That's the truth of what happened there. But when I was performing locally in San Diego and stuff, I would know I'd booked the gig, so I knew, but because there were clients and people, that's why we don't have a band anymore, because they misbehaved in front of clients. I would go there before and even look at it before saying yes to a gig, because there were some places that were notorious for having bad sound. And so I was just like, dude, and if our band's already struggling with certain things, let's not do it. And and it also was about the size of our band. If you know what I mean? Cause we went up from everything from a 3 to 9 piece band. And so that's a lot. And so
Yeah.
you needed to know who, what, and where for that space. So do you recommend people go to the venue before the day of?
If you can, it's a good idea to go to the venue before you decide to play there, if you can. But oftentimes you can't, and you have to just look at the pictures online or look at the reviews online. And theoretically, that's why you have a booking agent, someone that knows the venue, knows the place, and can decide if it's right for you or not. I mean, that should be what you're getting when you pay for a booking agent, is someone who picks the appropriate venue for you. That's part of the job, making sure you're paid a fair wage and making sure the venue promotes that you're there and making sure it's the right space for you. I have had one occasion where the venue was so wrong, and it was a venue where they had music every night, and would have it from like 6 p.m. to like 2 in the morning. And I had a set that I was supposed a 45-minute set that I was supposed to do. The pay was not great, but it was okay. And it was just me and the guitar. But we got there, and it was such a bad scene of the kind of people that were out there, um, that were in the area, and nobody was paying attention to the music, that I actually left and called the agent and said, "Hey, I'm not playing this. I'm not playing the show," because there were actually some people outside that threatened me when we pulled up, and they said, "Hey, you're a blind man with a guitar. I bet I could take it from you." our,
And
our
and
our
they
Uber driver our Uber
yeah,
driver was like, "Oh, hell no, we're getting back in this car and leaving." And so we did.
yeah.
But I was on tour and I'd never been there before, and it was impossible for me to scope out the venue like I needed to, and it just didn't work out, and they didn't miss me because, as I say, they had a lot of starving people playing. Nobody really paying. They had music, but nobody was really paying attention to the music.
That's where you end up playing these extra longer sets that you didn't plan for. Going
Yeah,
back to that gig, I mean, at the La Paloma Theater, I was sweating, man. And they have those really bright lights, and I could feel my fingers sweating, and the nerves started to get up on me. But it taught me stuff.
I mean, it's
I don't get upset about any of it because all
yeah.
of it taught me something. Yeah.
Exactly right. As long as you can walk away from the experience wiser, then I say the experience was good for you.
Well,
So,
I did fall off stage one time. We've had some insane things with gigs, and you never knew what was going to happen, especially with a full band. And it's important to have the right people. When we talk about a band, it's important. We had
oh
some
yeah,
really amazing humans in our band, and then we had some crazies and that were really good. And so it was this really interesting amalgamation. And it was a learning experience for
and
sure. But also what we've talked about is have your gear ready, have backups, whether it's an amp, strings, all of that stuff. I used to always carry an extra mic because you
sure.
never knew on mics. Mics can be fickle. I always had is it a JBL? That's what I had. A JBL? Is it a JB or JBL?
Well, JBL is a speaker company. I've never seen them make a microphone, but that isn't. I mean, I don't know.
Well, I know we had JBL. Oh, yeah, that's right. We had JBL Oh, these were cool JBL speakers. They were awesome. I bought them from the drummer when he was short on money, and then he wanted them back. Anyway,
Uh,
you know how this tells you about our band, right?
yeah, yeah.
So we know about your gear, and have that set while you can. And I'm going to say, everyone, like, always hide your gear if you're going to drive there with your car. I mean, the amount of times I hear about musicians getting their gear stolen. They'll go to an after party and leave their gear in the car. We travel full time, Nancy and I, on the road, and no one can tell what's in our car. No one. You can never see what's in there. And we also don't leave important things like computers in the car while we're at someone's house or something. We don't do that. This is a rule. Try not to leave your stuff in the car if you don't have to, because people know you're the band. And don't let your band members drive drunk, because the cops
No,
are watching bands. Don't, watch your band and be aware of that. I'm just saying, one drummer, anyway, we've had DUIs happen in our band over stuff. In fact, they didn't even get a full DUI because he wasn't drunk. And it was a brand new policeman who thought he was going to get his first DUI kind of thing. He was very excited about arresting him. But they watched our band. They knew we were doing this festival. They watched how our drummer and rhythm guitar player were acting. One of them decided they could smoke pot right outside the police station in a downtown. And what do you think happened?
Yeah,
Anyway,
smart.
so that's a whole other story. But that's the thing is, there's just it's a business. And I think musicians have really changed since when we were in a band. Musicians now are drinking smoothies before they perform. The alcohol thing is not what it used to be like in music of rock, blues, all of that. It's really gotten healthier, I think. But that's something to be aware of with your bandmates. I mean, even the guys from Canned Heat, one showed up at a gig higher than a kite on something I don't even know what it was. I think it was meth. I'm not sure. But he was messed up and he was way up there in the music world and messed up. And, we had to deal with him.
Yeah, that's just not a professional
Be
way to
aware,
be.
yeah, be in a band with them. It's not worth it because it's dangerous too.
It depends on your goal. If your goal is just to jam with your friends and play a local bar in town and you don't want anything more, then that's fine. But if you want to be respected and treated like a professional, you got to act like a professional.
Yep.
And part of that means showing up sober. The other thing I'd say is, when we were on tour, we scoped out a central hub location and stayed at an extended stay hotel, which shared a parking lot with a super Walmart in New Jersey. And so we had plenty of room to park our van and our trailer. And of course it's got the band name right on the trailer, so it's a band. But what we had wheel locks that we put
Hmm.
on all of the vehicles. When at night we had wheel locks. We had a GPS tracking system that we had on both vehicles, so we could that automatically alerted you if the vehicle moved. And then we also had a camera mounted on our trailer, so we could see. We could log in on our phone and check things and stuff like that. And we parked the vehicle directly under some lights in the parking lot. So
Hmm.
those are things that you can do. It wasn't cheap, but those are things you can do to try and help your gear not get lost. And we left some stuff in the trailer. The trailer didn't have windows, so you can't really tell what's in there. But we left some stuff in the trailer that just wasn't practical to take in. But we always took our guitars in,
Well,
so
just
we
even
don't.
for the weather.
Yeah,
My
it was for
gosh,
the it
even
was for the weather, but
yeah.
that's the reason we did it. But we always took the guitars in and put those in the room. Always took our computers in, put those in the room. So you're right. There's certain things you are able to take with you, and sometimes you don't get to go to the after party because you just can't afford to leave your stuff unattended. If you're in a venue that's going to be open, and there's a green room and you can lock the green room door. Maybe you can leave some stuff in there or, stuff like that. We have, for a live day, we always have private security that we hire, and they're usually off-duty policemen. And so we always have a green room that's got an off-duty policeman outside the door. And then there's another off-duty policeman wandering around, being mobile.
That's
And so that way, you can leave your stuff in the green room and have a place you can go where you're not going to be bothered and where you're also going to, but not everybody does that.
no.
We do it when we closed down the street and had a street party. The city required that you had off-duty policemen at it, 2 off-duty policemen. And ever since then, I just said, that's a good idea. Let's just keep doing it.
It is.
So
It is. Yeah, I think that's the thing is getting to know who your band members are, what your goals are together.
yeah,
And that way, and then when things go wrong, you know who does what,
yeah,
and I think that's what rehearsal does, but then going out and doing your first gig, you're going to come back and maybe record it too,
yeah,
because then I think recordings are fantastic because you can listen after your gig to see where your weak spots are. And some of the
absolutely.
weak spots turn into the best parts. So
Oh
don't,
yeah, absolutely, absolutely.
yeah,
Sometimes the
it's
unintended things are
okay. Listen, I'm going to be the first person to say, don't do the martini thing. Okay. If you've got nerves, be prepared. I know Stevie Nicks does a shot of tequila. So if you're able to do something, fine, whatever, but don't be in a place where you can't do your job.
right.
I know I can have a glass of wine and be fine, but I'll tell you this, your voice doesn't like booze,
It
period.
does
It's
not.
not good for the hairs. I know we have all these little vocal cord things and hairs, and that sounds weird, but it's true. It's not good. It dries out your vibrations. Let's put it that way. It's not good.
Yeah, I
Your
mean, really,
voice
water is
wants
fun.
a moist environment that's
Yeah,
not dried from wine.
I really like water is the best thing to drink, but I don't even follow that rule. I usually drink a ginger ale or a Powerade.
Everyone has their thing. I know that you like some people do They
hot
have
seat.
their this is how I have to have things and
Yeah.
this is what I do before every gig and I'm like, I don't know. Just
I
go
mean,
out there and see what the heck happens. You know?
generally speaking, I have tried to make my life not depend on any kind of ritual. I have
Yeah.
tried to make my life flexible, and I try not to have anything that I absolutely have to make things work, so that I can be flexible when things go wrong. And at some point, they're going to. Uh, Not every show or anything like that, but at some point, you're going to have something weird happen that you couldn't possibly have anticipated, and you're gonna need to. So I try to be free of ritual. But that being said, I do like to warm up for about 3 or 4 minutes on my voice. I like to warm up 3 or 4 minutes. My most vocal teachers will tell you you should warm up for half an hour and all these different things. But 3 or 4 minutes usually tells me, I know my voice. 3 or 4 minutes usually tells me what kind of night it's going to be and what notes to avoid that aren't working for me at that time. I feel like if you warm up too much, you're burning. At some point, you're starting to burn performance time. And I am kind of like a strikeout pitcher that closes the game. I play hard, I play fast, and I can't go 10 innings. I can go 3 innings. And but it's like maximum power, it's out there. So I kind of think of myself as like a closing pitcher that has a great command of the ball for 3 innings, and then after that, it's a law of diminishing
Mm.
returns. So I don't do shows longer than 3 innings. I don't do. I really don't like to do shows longer than I like my favorite show is an hour-long show because I feel like
Yeah.
we go in, we hit them hard, we make them excited, we make everybody happy, and then we leave them wanting more. I
Exactly.
that's
3 hours is insane. What they're
well,
doing now?
I used to do 4 hours. We had a
Yeah.
gig as the house band for a Ritz Carlton hotel, and we had to do 4 hours, and that was just really tough. It was just really. I mean, we did it, but you got to work up to it. You can't just do it. And my rehearsals tend to be 3 or 4 hours. We'll tend to do long rehearsals, but rehearsals are different than a performance. It's a whole different thing because in a performance, you've got adrenaline, you got all this stuff going.
That
You got all these different things happening in a performance that's not happening in the rehearsals. And so, you tend to sing a little harder in a show and sing a little louder and, wear yourself
and
down
the
a little bit
energy.
faster.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because you're giving everybody your heart and soul, It's
Yeah.
like when you're
You're
doing
leaving
that,
it all on the stage. Don't
if you're
make
doing it right.
And I don't make adrenaline as part of the brain tumor that took my eyesight and everything.
Oh, yeah.
I don't make adrenaline, so I have to guard my energy really carefully, which is why I disappear to the green room and stay there and stay not not
Yeah.
not like silent, but stay low key. And that's why like I don't visit with people much before the show. After the show's over, I'll stay all night and take pictures with people and sign autographs, do whatever they want to do. I'll stay as long as it takes. But before the show, I like to disappear off to the green room and be
Mm.
not I wouldn't say quiet, but be laid back and not because I'm going to put everything I got on the show, and then I'm exhausted because I don't make adrenaline, so my body doesn't supply me with extra.
After a show, it takes me forever to climb down.
Oh, yeah, it does. You get on that performance high, especially if it was a good night,
Ah,
and you're all wound up and you're in show mode,
I
and
love it.
it's hard to go to bed after that. So
Yeah, but
usually,
when you do sleep, it's like the best sleep ever when you had a good show. If it was
yeah,
a bad show, then you're like all nitpicky and whiny, and then you start listening over and over to it, and you at that point put it away. There's going to be a lesson, get on with it. But
yeah.
it's like, yeah, I mean, we used to do gigs and then like jam until like the sunrise after that. Like you just once I don't know, I could do music all day long and never, I love it. It's just it's a true love, and I think and I love it when you get to do shows and there's other musicians there that maybe you're opening for or headlining or doing whatever, and it's like, wow, you get to experience more music, get to meet them and sometimes collaborate or jam with them. And
Oh
it's
yeah,
like, it's the best because musicians are family. And Joey, in closing, I want to tell you, who's being on our show tomorrow?
I don't.
Um, so everyone, Monday, you know, you've got to all tune in Monday, October 27th. I'm going to say this because Joey's played with members of Leonard Skinnard, and he is, the music ambassador of Macon, Georgia. which is the music capital of Southern rock. And tomorrow we have Greg Walker on the show. Greg Walker is a bass player from Blackfoot. So many of you may know that band from way back when, and they are insane. And he also played bass for Leonard Skinner for a few years. Then went back to Blackfoot, which he's a co-founder of. But now he has a new band out. Well, it's actually like a resurrected one, Two Wolf, that he plays with. Lance Lopez is in there. Lance has been on the front cover of our magazines before. Incredible guitarist, but it's all high energy, hardcore, amazing Southern rock that we all miss. It's, yeah, because he used to play with like the Allman Brothers and all of them. So we talked about Macon, and I thought of you while we were talking about it because it's your town. So
Absolutely.
everyone tune in for that, for some, he tells some great stories of all these musicians he's performed with, and talks about the whole process and being true to your music. You do put your heart and soul into it and keep the integrity. And that's the honest thing. If you want to have a good gig, you still have to connect with the audience. That was the hardest thing for me, was to actually talk to the audience. You would never believe it, but it was the hardest thing. And then I realized, just start talking to them and ask them questions. If you're like, ask about where are we? Ask questions if you're nervous, and let them talk to you. And then you get this nice warm vibe. So what do you think on that, Joey? I mean, getting out there and having to actually speak as a lead person, the front person, that can be hard sometimes.
Yeah, I learned never to ask questions that I didn't already know the answer to.
Yeah.
Because I remember one gig I said, does anybody like Elvis? And they all went, boo. And I was like, well, we're playing it anyway.
Well, there you go.
We played Elvis anyway. They were all like, oh, boo Elvis. And I was like, I don't know how you could possibly boo Elvis. Anyway, they did. So,
just ask what's going on in the town or that kind of thing, and make fun of things that go wrong. I remember doing a festival where a train was going by behind the stage every few minutes.
To be annoying.
That was annoying. Another festival where they had it set up next to a car wash on the street festival.
God.
And then the drummer wouldn't move his drum kit because he was high. And he was like, I'm not moving my drums. And we're like, well, how about this? You're not in the band anymore because this is not happening. We're not going to have that kind of stuff. Yeah, it's fun. It's fun. I think we gave a lot of good examples of what not to do, Joey.
Yeah.
We did. But everyone have fun in your music journey. It's a beautiful journey. And it's always
It
is.
Realize,
Joey,
it's like life. You're gonna get some unexpected things that you'll treasure forever.
Exactly. And they all make a good story for sure.
Absolutely, if nothing else.
JoeyStuckey.com is where you keep up with Joey. The link is in the episode notes. And if you're going to be doing any kind of recording project, call Joey. His setup is incredible. Nancy and I have toured his studio, and definitely, I'm eyeing that out. I want to go record stuff with Joey for sure. So everyone, I encourage, to go to Macon, Georgia. It is a music capital of Southern rock. So there's a lot of history there. It's a beautiful part of the region. And we do know, because of Tom Rule, that they have a good Waffle House there. And that's very important when you're in the South.
Absolutely.
And all musicians, 1 or 2 in the morning, coffee and waffle. I want not waffles, but I want the hash browns.
That's the breakfast of champions.
I could have that. Exactly. Thanks, Joey. Always looking forward to next time. Always enjoy every second. Thank you for listening to Big Blend Radio. Keep up with our shows at bigblendradio.com.